All right, well, we can go ahead and get started now. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Claire. I'm the events coordinator here at Alertus Technologies. I'll be your moderator for today. Today, we welcome Dr. Ben Brewer, Director of Product Management, who brings over 40 years of experience in crisis and emergency management and information system security. Ben has 25 years of operational emergency management experience and holds a doctorate in Homeland Security, where his seminal research uncovered 24 key strategies emergency managers use to implement emergency notification systems within their organizations. Ben joins us today to discuss the latest application of our personal Duress badge. He will detail its essential features, including one-touch activation and precise location data, explore the integrated mobile application, and discuss why the system is crucial for organizations in sectors such as healthcare, education, and field services. Our session today will be from 1 to 2 p.m. and we'll begin with an in-depth presentation from Ben and then have the opportunity to engage with Ben to go over any questions you may have. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you after today's session. All right, Ben, please take it away.
All righty. Thank you, Claire. Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to join us today to talk a little bit about the Alertus Personal Duress Badge and its extension into a new and exciting area. For those of you that may not be as familiar with Alertus, I'd like to get started today by giving you a very brief introduction to the company and what it is that we do, what our areas of expertise are, at least to some degree specific to this topic, and then we'll dive into it. We'll kind of revisit the Personal Duress Badge just to kind of ground ourselves in the device that is going to be enabling all of these features and functions that we're going to talk about that are critical to workplace and lone worker safety in 2026. You can see the rest of the discussion topics there. We'll close out we're going to talk about all the features, the functionalities, and then we're going to talk about why this is actually important to you, just to kind of give you a little bit of a hook specific, hopefully, to some appealing features and functions that we're going to cover, and then understand how that really fits in 2026 for you all. Okay, so specific to Alertus Technologies is, we're actually we'll be celebrating our 24th year in business this year. Alertus was founded back in 2002, and very similar to a lot of companies and corporations that have put together, innovative products and services to address a compelling need. Alertus was actually born out of tragedy. Back in 2001, September of 2001, a whole bunch of different calamity obviously befell the country at that time. But a little bit later, in September of 2001, the University of Maryland sustained a direct hit by an F3 tornado. And F3 tornadoes on the mid-Atlantic seaboard back in the early 2000s were not commonplace. They were very, very rare. I still remember the first tornado that emerged a couple of years in advance of that down in Washington, D.C., and most of us were just scratching our heads trying to figure out how Ohio was able to blow that storm out into the mid-Atlantic seaboard. Unfortunately, in this particular instance, though, there was absolutely zero advanced warning on the campus that they were under the gun for a tornado warning. And sadly, it cost 2 students their lives, and obviously, a lot of property damage occurred on the campus. But our CEO was a graduate student at the University of Maryland at that time. And it was from that disaster that the idea of the Alert Beacon, which is our foundational product that is still serving strongly in 2026, and the Alertus notification system took place. Fast forward to 2026. We have more than 2,500 customers around the globe in more than 40 countries. A lot of different solutions, obviously addressing a lot of different problem sets around the world, and we are virtually serving every industrial sector that one might imagine emergency notification is relevant in. Now, specific to today's conversation, an element of what we have been able to achieve over the last roughly quarter of a century in business is a very strong degree of expertise and experience in working with customers such as yourself, specific to personal duress. Some of our personal duress modalities where we have the ability to innately understand exactly who within an organization was initiating an alert came to be in between 2013 2014. So this discipline area for us is roughly 12 to 13 years old, and we're going to talk about how we're expanding into a new realm specific to personal duress at this point. Let me get that out of the way. So we're going to start out, like I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk a little bit about the device that enables these behaviors that we're here to talk about today. And it is called the Alertus Personal Duress Badge. You can find more information and data sheets on the appliance itself out on our website, alertus.com. But this particular badge, it's what I would call a line badge form factor. It is very suitable for wearing on a neck lanyard or a button clip that might be attached to a uniform lapel, or maybe even secured at the belt level. Two sides to the device. The side that's the easiest to talk about is on the right, where you can see it branded with the Alertus logo. On that side, we do have the ability to power up and power down these devices to ensure that we have the ability to preserve battery life. They are Bluetooth low energy devices, so their connectivity to the Bluetooth enabled appliance is very, very stable. And the duration is very significant. In the time between charge, if you will, is relatively significant depending upon how the device is being used. Now, the business side of the badge, which is typically worn a little bit closer to the chest, first and foremost, we can configure the panic button, and we're going to talk about that in detail. It does have an LED indicator in the event that you're testing connectivity, or even that you're looking for a visual indicator that the badge has transmitted the number of button clicks or button depressions that were selected into the authoritative system. It supports a magnetic charger. We actually deploy these with an individual charger that individuals can connect to a standard USB connection, or we also have magnetic charging stations that can support up to 30 badges at a time for larger enterprise deployments. The badge also, unbelievably, even as small as this badge is, because it's roughly 3.5 inches tall by about 2.25 inches wide, it actually has a buzzer. So that little itty bitty dot that you see there below the button, it actually has the ability to emit an 85 decibel buzz or tone when configured to do so, specific to certain types of alerts, or it can be silent, again, just depending upon its configuration. And it is IP6 rated. For those of you that might not be aware or familiar with the IP ratings, what this means is that the device is protected from moisture. It's not necessarily protected from depths, so I wouldn't recommend taking it swimming, but if you're outdoors or if you're in a moist environment, the device is protected from that environmental threat. Now, what this app does and what we're going to talk about is how it pairs with the AlertAware mobile app to extend personal duress, which is really the exciting aspect of this, beyond the physical confines of a building or even a campus, and address the mobile world where a lot of workers are working today, whether they be remote workers or whether they be lone workers, let's say in the healthcare sector, out visiting with patients that are not able to get into the healthcare facility, insurance providers, fast food delivery people like DoorDash, pretty much you name it. You can imagine being out in the environment away from your support structure, but this provides that tether back to the organization. It does support the in-facility personal duress, so thinking about K through 12 schools, manufacturing, production, financial sector, anywhere we are typically in a physical office, but perhaps roaming throughout the building. Great support feature there because you're not tied to a button that might be mounted to or secured to or connected to a computer on your desk. Gives you that portability without necessarily having to rely upon the Wi-Fi connection, and a lot of other really cool functionalities that surround this, such as the ability to build up teams and manage who is assigned to an individual team leader to ensure that we really have that targeted duress alerting that goes on within the system, active tracking in the event that somebody initiates a personal duress alert. We have the ability, let's say, for example, Ben triggers a personal duress alert. We have the ability to track Ben's location until that incident is resolved and marked out as closed. And then, of course, there at the very bottom, we have the ability to automate 911 notification with an interesting twist for those of you who are familiar with Alertus's 911 Connect. So let's get into the actual configuration of the device. The device itself, the badge is very easily configured. Again, it's a Bluetooth badge. Our alert-aware customers would be licensed to have these Bluetooth badges. And as soon as that licensing is in place, the organization or the system owner at the organization that manages the system configuration would enable Bluetooth badges. Once those Bluetooth badges are enabled within the system, the badges can be assigned to individuals and they can be paired either with an organizationally owned device or with a personally owned device to enable whatever the configured activation sequences are specific to the badge. The badge, regardless of the fact that it just has the one black tactile button, it can support up to 3 different incident types that are defined and tailored by our customer organizations. You are not limited or restricted to any incident or emergency type. You can very clearly identify and configure those types against the button to press patterns that we would provide you with. And what we're looking at with this particular device, which is really exciting to me, is not only does it have the ability to initiate an alert going back to somebody's supervisor or somebody that is in a position of trust, someone who can receive that incoming incident report, evaluate it, and then escalate the response accordingly. It also has the ability to trigger other pre-established alert behaviors across the unified system. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on a couple of slides down. And as I mentioned, specific to that, you can pair out those button depressions, a single click, double click, triple click, to where it not only initiates an incident, but definitely uh, it could definitely execute those preconceived ideals and system behavior patterns that are configured within the system. The other nice thing about the badge is that even with the 911 capability, you have the ability to put the system into a test mode. So you have the ability to test out your configurations without fear of inciting a wider response across the organization because an actual 911 dispatch is occurring or things of that nature. So as I mentioned, this particular device is designed to extend the reach of personal duress alerting. And the way that we do that to make sure that we have the ability to get out and away from the building or the facility or the campus is to pair that via Bluetooth with the AlertAware mobile app. Now, for those who may not be aware of AlertAware, AlertAware is an Alertus developed product. It's been in place now. We're going on its 5th year, but it supports distributed recipient mass notification or personal recipient notification. So the modalities that AlertAware really focuses in on from a mass alerting perspective are email, SMS, phone calls, and what we call push notifications, the notifications that go out to the mobile app. It also has the ability to trigger desktop activation. It can trigger other companion devices with other integrated partner solutions that AlertAware works with. But the key feature that we're really focusing on specific to the Bluetooth badge, the personal duress badge, is that we are going to associate that badge with specific incident types. And you see 6 examples in the image that's up on the screen right now. The AlertAware mobile app is supported. It's deployed in both the iOS and the Android app stores, and it's usable not only on smartphones, but in some instances on tablets as well. And I do want to characterize that because we have had some customers come to us and say, hey, do we have the ability to utilize the AlertAware mobile app on on our organizational iPads? And again, sometimes dependent upon the generation of the iPads, but we have seen some success there. Ultimately, we're looking at iOS and Android smart devices for this application to work from. And of course, it's got to have that cellular connectivity to make it truly extensible to get out and away from the organization's facility and out into the real world, if you will, away from the physical workplace. Um, the system, because it is a personal recipient notification system, it focuses in very tightly on qualifying that specific individuals, specifically targeted individuals that are either individually targeted or they're a part of a group, receive and confirm receipt of a specific alert. So as you might imagine, we want to make sure that we can definitively say that we know that Ben is using this AlertAware mobile app. So as a part of that, it's a very, very secure application. So we do have highly secure user verification and authentication methodologies in place to include organizational SSO, where the organizational SSO, let's say, for example, Microsoft Entra ID, is also coupled with a multi-factor authentication capability. We do have the ability to inherit those types of behaviors and really kind of make that user experience a little bit less complex and a little bit more transparent. Now, even though I'm showing you 6 different incident types up on the screen, the beauty of AlertAware is that it is not a what you see is what you get type solution, to where Alertus feels it knows best, and we are going to tell you what incident types you should use. Even though we do deploy 10 standard incident types with the system, you all have the ability to make a decision as to whether you want to employ any of those 10. You can selectively define which ones will be active and present for your affected stakeholders to utilize as a part of either manual incident reporting or incident reporting via the personal Duress badge. And in addition to that, you have the ability to establish new incident types. For example, early on, about a year ago, I worked with a customer who was just adopting AlertAware, and their primary use case for the incident reporting was to focus on child safety as well as hold and secure. And those were the only 2 incidents that they wanted to have. So we give them the ability to create those, apply some definitive text, as you can see represented on the screen, and upload a logo. We've had customers utilize logos that are very specific to the standard response protocol, for example, or just other logos or icons, if you will, that are a little bit more generally accepted within their operational environment. We give you that a fuller customization experience, if you will. And as I mentioned, this approach to reporting an incident or reporting an emergency is very tailorable. So you can keep these contained solely within AlertAware, or you can actually set them up to where what we call a sensor event would be sent from AlertAware over to your Alertus server, so that it could then evaluate that sensor event and automatically initiate other unified system type behaviors. And we also present the ability to support two-way chat. And again, two-way chat is something that can be enabled for a specific incident type, or it can be disabled. The call is really up to you. Ultimately, though, when we're thinking about the personal Duress badge, we definitely need to make sure that we're leveraging the incident and emergency reporting functionality, and that those incident and emergency types that are established within the system are very easily paired with the badge to directly support your use case. One of the other extensions that we've developed specific to the personal Duress badge that's paired with AlertAware really focuses on span of control and kind of an economy of scale, if you will, specific to the deployment. A lot of our customers are larger enterprises with multiple locations, And if every leader within the organization were to receive every incident report, sometimes that's just not really an optimal or desired outcome. So what we have done is we have created the ability to put together teams within the organization. And for any team, there will be a team leader or a supervisor, and then they will have any number of team members. You kind of see a little bit of a cheesy representation of that up on the screen, just kind of a 3-to-1 type approach. But what this does is it makes sure that there's not that we mitigate the risk of notification fatigue at the leadership level. If leaders are receiving incident reports from every employee within an organization that is either equipped with the AlertAware mobile app or personal Duress badge that's paired to AlertAware, it might be easier for that leader to overlook an incident that's being reported that's affecting the life safety of one of their team members. So what this provides is, again, direct supervision alerting to let's say, for example, team one, it would let C. Jones know that W. Brewster had indicated personal duress. And what they would see just as um, kind of a tab, if you will, within AlertAware when they look at it, either their AlertAware mobile app or the AlertAware UI itself is represented on the screen. And they would have the ability to click on that tab, see all the details that are associated with that tab, which would include the name of the individual, a telephone number if one is associated with the contact record that individual, in this example, Matt Strayer, could be contacted at, and it would also provide the geographic location of where Matt was at the time that he initiated the report, but it will also initiate what we call active tracking that I'm going to talk about here in a couple of slides. Now, again, speaking to this particular dynamic where we've got a team type structure, and this is not a requirement to utilize the personal duress badge. It is a recommendation for larger organizations, however, just from a clarity perspective. Um, but once that alert comes in, the team leader actually receives an alert on their mobile app. They receive an SMS text message, and they receive an email letting them know that a member of their team has initiated some sort, whatever's been configured, some sort of personal duress indication that requires their attention. And then from there, they can claim that incident, which lets other supervisors know that, okay, I can sit back. Ben has got control of this. I don't need to lean forward and perhaps get in the way of that response. But that claim activity also serves as a potential trigger for 911 notification. And we're going to talk about the dynamics of the way that we are executing 911 notification within AlertAware. As I mentioned, with regard to the 911 Connect capability over on the Alertus side, this is a different spin on things. So as I mentioned, a part of the incident activation, it basically, so long as the individual has enabled location services on their smartphone or their smart device, it's going to capture that snapshot. And we capture two different artifacts. We capture a specific latitude and longitude, as well as the approximate location. In the case of what you see up there on the screen, that's pretty accurate, but it is a little bit off specific to, typically wants to put it like right in the front part of my driveway, right outside my garage, instead of right over the garage where my office is located. But very similar to what you've seen and experienced with AlertAware, if you guys are using this for incident reporting, the reporting individual does have the ability to kind of modify their location a little bit. Now, when the system is active, it's important that you all and your stakeholders understand that AlertAware is not actively tracking or collecting any location data from users of the system. We take individual privacy very seriously, and in working with customers, we have seen that there are implications specific to labor agreements and contractual arrangements surrounding employee security that these systems need to be very sensitive of. So we're very transparent in when the system goes active, how long it will stay active with regard to active tracking, so that you can inform and have those discussions with your affected stakeholders. We do recommend, on these smart devices that when they're setting it up from a location perspective, number one, that they allow it when alert aware is being used, and that they enable either precise location as it's laid out on the iOS side or high accuracy as recommended on the Android devices. And typically what we see with regard to accuracy report results are really kind of depending upon the environmental surrounding that the mobile device is in. Uh, we'll see an accuracy between 1 and 60 meters, and that is right in line with the expectations that are put forth by Apple and Android. You can see some of the variables there that do impact accuracy. I think most of us are aware of that. Most of us, I think, over the history of our professional lives, we've experienced Wi-Fi or cellular connectivity because we're in a basement or we're in a building with, hardened walls with rebar in the concrete. Any number of things can come into play to kind of impact accuracy. But assuming that there is a connection, there will always be a location associated with it. And again, the tolerances are very much in line with what we see across industry. And the way to, ensure that you're down into the single digits is to enable the precise location with the high accuracy on the Android side. With standard incident reporting via Alert Aware, if an organization says, hey, this is really a cool use case. I like some of these features and functions, but I don't necessarily have a use for the badge because my workforce works within their mobile phones and they have that time specific to the threats that they're expected to face to be able to pull out their phone, get into the phone, open the app, and initiate the incident report. The location snapshot is just that. It's just a snapshot. There is no persistent tracking when an incident report is initiated at this current time, when it's initiated via the mobile app. Now, where that changes is when we've got the personal duress badge functionality enabled within the system. And anytime the badge is used to initiate an incident or emergency situation that is impacting employee safety, the active tracking mechanism gets enabled until that incident is resolved. The way that active tracking rolls out, it is a very large scale map that is visible within the UI, and it can be team specific. If teams are being utilized, it'll be very team specific. So if Ben has a team, I would see a representation of the last known location of each of my team members, and that would be associated with the last time typically that they initiated either a test alert or an actual incident report. And for the individual that initiated the incident report via the personal duress badge, I would be able to actively track their progress, where they're at on the map. For example, if you have a stakeholder that has been out on a safe walk and they indicate that they're being stalked and they initiate the alert, but somehow the threat is vastly more immediate than the response supports, and they are somehow abducted, you have the ability to track the location of that individual so long as they do not become separated from that smart device. And that's something I think all of us are kind of aware of, but it definitely bears a degree of emphasis in this regard. It is not the badge that is being tracked. It is the device to which it is paired that's being tracked. And we do that, based on very short frequency check-ins or heartbeats with the smart device to make sure that we're tracking where that individual is. That helps to inform the response. One of the first things that really kind of happens in the dispatch aspect of this particular solution is the passing of the specified location when the individual initiated the alert. But from an actual response perspective, we all know that it takes seconds to minutes to dispatch and arrive on scene. Those first responders could have the ability to stay informed with the primary stakeholder, the lead stakeholder, if you will, in the organization, to help coach them. Hey, this is what the system's showing specific to the location of Ben's smartphone at this particular time. One of the other things that kind of comes into play with this, when working with customers, it was we learned very early on that large mobile workforces, whether they're going out in teams of two or they're lone workers, in particular, they typically have a schedule throughout the day that is known. It is somewhat flexible depending upon their sector, but they typically tend to have either work orders that they're fulfilling. If they're working in the utility sector, hey, I'm going to be out at this location within the county on this pole. Um, or if they are somebody in law enforcement working with a previous offender who's on parole, it could be a physical work or physical home address that they're going to be visiting at. But what we provide the organization to do within the bounds of their use case is to create an appointment schedule for each worker that possesses one of these personal duress badges. Again, not a requirement, but something that might be useful to management and awareness within the system. And if there is a need for those individuals that are out working away from the physical campus to actually check in using the personal duress badge and then check out from those appointments, that actually has the ability to initiate certain system type behaviors. As you might imagine, check in, check out would be associated with the buttons. And as soon as somebody checks in, that initiates that active tracking within the system. You can actually set up check-in duration and frequency. So if Ben is in a particularly high threat line of work, you might want him to check in every 10 to 15 minutes. The system has the ability to track that. When did Ben last check in? Is he overdue? If he's overdue, the system initiates notifications to the leadership team so that the response or the manner to address the lagging or the failed check-in can be addressed in a manner that's appropriate. The appointments themselves, they're assigned to a badge holder. They are given a physical address where the individual is going to be, and it could have a contact name at that appointment location. It could be a patient name, for example, if it's a lone health worker out in the community, just so that there's that awareness of who the lone worker is interfacing with during that period of time. Um, but again, as I mentioned, check-in intervals and frequency, duration, very, very tailorable. And they do not have to be used, but they most certainly can be. Again, really just kind of gets back to that use case and giving you all the power that you need to make sure that the system, once configured, meets your use cases as closely and tightly as possible. Now, as I mentioned, AlertAware does 911 triggering as well, and that's a big part of workplace and worker safety initiatives, especially moving into 2026 with some of the increased scrutiny specific to how our organization's seeing to the safety, not only of their on-site employees, but their lone workers that may be either on-site or working remotely. As a part of that, we've engaged with a 24/7 UL certified alarm monitoring center that has the ability to escalate alerts and notifications to the appropriate local public safety access point or 911 dispatch center. We within the way that the system is architected, you can create one or more 911 triggers within the system. And these could be specific to different threat types and different response um, dynamics that you might want to see executed in the event that the trigger triggers. For example, the the outbound flow, does it flow to law enforcement? Does it flow to the 911 dispatch center as a law enforcement dispatch, a medical, or a fire dispatch, or a combination of those three? We have the ability to support that dynamic triggering. And what's new and really exciting to me on this particular front is that previously, in a lot of instances, when seeking to automate the 911 flow outside of the educational sector, there had to be a mandatory verification process that was undertaken. Now, that could result in a lack of verification, or what we call an unverified alarm, which is then escalated to 911. But in this particular situation, because of what this solution is designed to do, we have the ability to ensure we're always going to try to verify. But does that verification delay the notification of 911? In this particular instance, if I were to initiate a personal duress alert that is associated with the 911 trigger, it would go to 911 immediately, with one caveat. In the event that we're working with an organization that has a response force on premise, or some response force that's assigned to kind of cover the lone workforce, the organization itself can set up a delay within the system. So if I wanted to, for example, um, for personal duress, if I wanted to implement a 45-second or even a 2-minute delay in calling 911, just to give the supervisor the ability to claim the incident report and direct organizational response assets on scene, we can do that, or it can be instantaneous. Again, what we were really striving to do with this particular solution was to put the power in your hands to really have a solution that can, no kidding, be tailored to what your expectations are. The other real key difference here between, again, for those of you that are familiar with the way that the Alertus notification system executes 911 notification, one of the most significant differences between Alertus and AlertAware in this regard is that Alertus triggers a response to a defined location, a system-defined location, meaning that you have, as an organization, you have established an Alertus location, and that Alertus location, which will be a physical address, sometimes it's whatever the Latin long is that's associated with the street address facing side of a facility, or it could be multiple locations on a larger campus, but the response will always go to those pinpoints that are associated with the Alertus location. Within the personal duress badge realm, however, given the fact that it is paired with a mobile device and we're capturing the precise, hopefully precise location of that badge, assuming that it's been enabled, the response will be targeted at the point of initiation. And then it can, the organization can help inform that response, assuming that they're still in touch with dispatchers throughout that process. Again, this is a feature function that is associated with the personal duress badge, but it can very easily within AlertAware also be used standalone without the personal duress badge. It is not a dependency between that, unlike the active alert or active tracking, like I mentioned. That is very specific to the badge use because that initiates that active tracking mechanism, whereas a manual activation via the mobile app or even the UI of an incident report in AlertAware, is just that snapshot in time. But again, the big difference here is that the first responders are not going to be rolling onto your premises instead of to a house that is 6.8 miles away from your physical location. And that kind of gets into the why this solution might be a really solid fit for your organization. So I think, anytime we have the opportunity to get together and talk about products and features and functions, you kind of always come up with, oh, okay, that's really cool, but what does it mean? What does it mean to my organization? What can I take back and reflect on specific to my use case, the threats that my stakeholders face, et cetera? First and foremost, the majority of us, I would dare say that everybody on this phone call is a person who cares about the safety of our organization's personnel. At the end of the day, we want those employees to be able to return home to their loved ones safely, without any adverse impacts to their well-being. That's why we are engaged in emergency management like functions, right? Number one tenet, save lives. Number two, protect property. Number three, preserve the environment. With that personal safety, oftentimes we kind of stand back and we say, well, we're kind of lacking regulation. And when it does come to emergency alerting, I'll be one of the first ones to stand up and argue that we really need a definitive standard that really focuses on emergency alerting. But OSHA does a very good job and it's only gotten better over the last 2+ decades of really defining what an organization's duty of care to its employees is specific to emergency alerting. Back in the day, it used to be every organization with 10 or more employees must have a formal method to alert them of threats to their safety. And that was it. Fast forward to where we're at in 2026, and OSHA regulations continue to mature. They have a lot more detail, a lot more rigor is involved with them, and thank heavens. So one of the biggest things that this particular solution does is it addresses the speed to response gap. Oftentimes what we saw in systems that were more manual versus being automated is that the time to detect that a threat had emerged, the time to notify an authority that a threat had emerged and a stakeholder's safety was at risk, and then the time to dispatch and arrive on scene or travel on scene, very unwieldy. We were talking. They used to call it the golden hour back in the day. From the time calamity strikes, we've got an hour to get on site and really make a difference. Fast forward to 2026, where technology is just moving forward exponentially instead of incrementally. There's a lot of capability to really shave time, minutes and seconds off of that process. This badge in particular, when it's paired with the AlertAware mobile app, it really kind of mitigates the detection notification gap that we used to experience, which was typically in the lower number of minutes, typically 2 to 3. Sometimes I saw ranges of 3 to 5. But it really, as soon as you see it, it really falls into that see something, say something type methodology that we've all tried to, really socialize and instill within our organizational culture since way back in 2001. It really helps speed that and make sure that individuals that are in authority, individuals that are charged with seeing to safety, whether it is a formal security operations center, whether it's an EOC, whether it is, somebody who is wearing multiple hats specific to safety, emergency management, crisis management, and things of that nature. Ultimately, we want to be able to immediately escalate the detection of a threat to individuals in authority so that they can see to their duty of care requirements that are very clearly laid out in Section 5 of OSHA. Now, OSHA in particular, the large scale law, not necessarily authoritative in all instances. It's kind of the broader guidelines that all organizations need to start with. It's the bare minimum that we need to be able to address and see to make sure that we are being proactive, responsive, and ensuring that individuals who are in harm's way that have need of direct assistance are receiving that direct assistance within as few number of minutes as possible from the onset of the incident. So, as I mentioned, the rule used to be the golden hour. Currently, I hear it more frequently talked about the golden 5 minutes. And when you think about active shooter incidents, statistics continue to bear out that 70% of all active shooter incidents are resolved within the first 5 to 7 minutes. It's very, very, I think it's very apparent as to why the first 5 minutes and being able to get first responders on scene as quickly from second 0 to minute 5 or minute 5 is just so absolutely imperative. Individuals who are suffering significant blood loss can perish within 2 to 3 minutes from the onset of the injury, if not quicker, depending again on how severe it is. So this particular solution, when we all sit back, I think it's easy when we sit there and we look at our organizations and the risks that we face and our stakeholder dynamics as well as our communication ethos within the organization. I think it's always really easy to sit back and say, yeah, this is why we need the systems that we are attempting to budget. But sometimes you really, budget dollars are tight in 2026. They have been for a good long while now. And not necessarily a bad thing, because I think we should always have to justify the tools that we're trying to bring in into the environment to execute, the emergency management trifecta, if you will. And when you look at OSHA, when you look at Alyssa's law or the Clery Act compliance, whether you're in K through 12 or higher education, respectively, this solution can serve as a significant enabler to make sure that you do remain compliant. And obviously, again, our number one focus is save lives, right? We want to make sure that we're sending mom and dad home safely at the end of the day, or we're sending somebody's student home to their parents at the end of the day, safe and sound. But there's always that other aspect, organizational liability. And automated systems, because they have been able to conclusively demonstrate the ability to shave time off of the detection, notification, and dispatch arrive cycle, i.e., mitigate to some degree that speed to response gap, that helps to clearly demonstrate that you are proactive, responsive, and not negligent in your duties. And it also helps or serves to, kind of lessen your liability score, if you will. The majority of organizations these days have to carry liability insurance that is specific to employee harm or stakeholder harm. And in the event that, some sort of personal safety, life safety hazard impacts an organization, we're oftentimes called upon to demonstrate that we did everything in our power to ensure that we had the systems, processes, procedures, trained up people in place to be able to affect those outcomes positively and disprove negligence, right? Try to make sure that if something does befall, we're able to limit liability to maybe 1 year's capital expenditure within the organization versus being some sort of catastrophic event to where we didn't have a solution to meet these requirements, and the survival of the organization comes into question. I won't really go through the bullets that I've got there specific to the Alyssa's Law and the Clery Act, because for those of you that are in the education sector, I think those things really stand out to you. In the higher education sector, you also have the Higher Education Opportunity Act of 2008 to comply with, which blessedly came into place and helped to formalize the emergency management role within higher education institutions, which arguably led to increases in funding, oftentimes dependent upon the institution type and location. But again, these types of solutions, they really help to mitigate the speed to response gap. And ultimately, what we try to do with all of our solutions is make sure that we give you all a single point of activation across your unified architecture, whether it is a companion paired system that is initiating our system, or whether we are initiating other like systems. And ideally, there should be a little bit of both in that rollout. But ultimately, what we want to be able to do is be able to decrease the time to get you guys the information that is necessary so that you can escalate or de-escalate a situation accordingly, orchestrate that effective response and transition into recovery as quickly as possible. But when it comes down to it, for those of us that have worked calamity, maintaining your situational awareness is absolutely imperative. And when you have to work with a lot of disparate systems and you have to jump from system A to B to C to D to Z, that's taking away from your situational awareness, and that degrades the organization's overall capability to effectively respond. Systems in 2025, 2026, I would have loved to have had these when I was still active back in 2008, because they do have the potential, when appropriately configured and used, to put that invaluable time back in your pocket as well as the pockets of your operators. So with that, I'll turn things back over to Claire for Q&A and whatever time we've got left here.
Thanks, Ben. We can get started with the Q&A portion. Please submit any questions into the chat or question box. We already have a few questions, so we'll just go ahead and get started with those. The first question I have is, this device must be paired to a device and is not a standalone device, correct?
That is correct. Right now, it has to be paired to a smart device, mobile phone. In some instances, it could be a tablet, but the tablet would have to have the Alert Aware mobile app installed on it and active.
All right, the next question is, can the system work on all mobile apps, or does the organization need the badges?
Actually, not all of the features work. If you're just going to use the mobile app for incident and emergency reporting, the only real feature that doesn't get invoked is the active location tracking. You can still have the ability to leverage check-ins, checkouts, build up teams. You could initiate 911 calls. A lot of these are optional features depending upon what your alert aware package is. But again, where it gets dependent upon that badge is to enable obviously speed of activation. I think that's probably something we all know, but to really enable that active tracking so that we know where's Ben at in the facility after he hit this alert. Um,
All right, next one. Looking more on the lone worker side, can the device detect the lack of motion? For example, if I'm a lone worker and I have a heart attack and unable to move, press the button and I'm laying on the ground, will the badge push notifications and alert my emergency to the appropriate people?
yeah, exactly. Those technologies do exist. They are not yet implemented within the system. However, they are on the roadmap.
All right. To what extent does AlertAware depend on the cloud?
Alert Aware is cloud. So if you're not familiar with Alert Aware is a software as a service solution. It is a shared hosted multi-tenant personal recipient system. The primary instance is located in AWS East. So it's very, very dependent upon the cloud. However, we do have redundancies built into the system to ensure the ability to restore the system and sustain that operation in the event that something befalls that data center. And then as far as connectivity, because I think this kind of dovetails a little bit into that, with regard to the AlertAware mobile app, and I should have mentioned this when I was talking about it, uh, you know, most times we're out, especially if we're out and traveling and we're in our car, more times than not, the mobile phone is connected to the cellular infrastructure. So we definitely leverage that cellular connectivity between device and provider, and then the injection into the internet to get to AlertAware. But in instances where cellular service indoors is degraded, so long as there's a Wi-Fi connection and that smart device is joined to the Wi-Fi network, then it also has the ability to not only, activate or initiate incident reports, but in the event that aside from the lone worker personal duress, you're actually triggering push notifications outbound to your affected stakeholders, they would still have the ability to receive and interact with that alert.
And then we had one question about someone that missed the beginning of the presentation. This presentation will be shared with you after, and it will also be posted on our website. Anyone else have any more questions?
Um, Claire, I do see one in there specific to the collateral on the personal duress badge.
Hmm.
It was submitted anonymously, which is fine. But if you wouldn't mind, please send me an email at bbrewer@alertus.com, and I'll send you the URL link to get to the collateral.
All right. Well, I think that concludes the Q&A section of this webinar. Thank you again, Ben, and thanks for everyone joining us today. If you guys have any questions or need additional information, please feel free to email us at events@alertus.com and we'll be happy to assist you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.